All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of M365 Voice. My name is Sarah Haase, and we have Mike.
I'm Mike Maravani.
And I'm Antonio Mayo.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to get into this. Another question from our question jar. Are you ready, gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Let's see what we got.
All right, for this one, how do you refer to teams, planners, planner plans, etc. in your organization without sounding repetitive?
Oh, or without getting confused what others mean.
And without getting your users confused, because let's be honest, for us, this is very interesting because how often are we on calls where we're talking with other consultants or other MVPs and we do hand motions or we say big T, little t, meaning big T is teams with a capital T and a little t is teams with a lowercase t, or the same thing with planner plans, but I can't use that same vernacular with my end users, and using the double words, teams, team, planner, plan, gets confusing. So how do people deal with that?
Sounds silly. I personally, when I'm talking about teams, and this is just me, I try to be specific about a SharePoint team site versus a team. And I know that's not always super clear, but I find if I add a SharePoint, SharePoint in front of team site, and I'm using the word site, people tend to get the notion, okay, that's in SharePoint. Whereas if I say a team or a Microsoft team, that's in Microsoft Teams. So I try very hard not to say Microsoft Teams. I'll say a Microsoft team. And then I think people get the notion of Microsoft team is a team in Microsoft Teams. So yeah, I don't know. You guys, what do you use for language?
Very, very similar. I always specifically say SharePoint team site to refer to it as the team site. And I always go as a Microsoft team to refer to Microsoft Teams that I have. We are creating a new team. I don't ever use Teams team. So I'm very specific that in making that distinction that it is not a SharePoint team site. And others still refer to the team, Microsoft team, as Microsoft team site. And I always try to correct them, just not to be picky, but just to make sure that there's no confusion among others while we're talking about. From the planner, I always use plan. I'm creating a new plan. Okay? So I'm trying to kind of educate the customers that when I refer to a plan, I'm talking about planner. I'm not talking about a project plan. I'm not talking about a plan in an Excel. I'm just talking about planner.
Yeah. Right. I think that one's almost easier. One of the things that I always recommend, and I'm going way, way back to the very beginning of my career, I was a technical writer, and very interesting job because one of the hardest things that we had to do at any company that I was at was create the style guide that we were going to use to govern how our writers write for our organization. And if you talk to people in your communications or corporate communications department, oftentimes, especially if you're in a medium to large organization, they're going to have communication guidelines about how they write and how they refer to things in your company. And so one of the things that I always recommend for my team is that we think about it, but that we always do it in a similar way. So if you're going to write email, should it be email all one word, e-mail, whatever you're going to do, I think doing it consistently is going to be the most important. So I like your idea, Antonio, of referring to Microsoft Teams team as a Microsoft team, but then standardize that when we say the word team, we should always say Microsoft team so as not to confuse it with the team that I work on every day that I happen to sit with. And if we can be standardized about it, I think that's good. Where I think there's a challenge is gaining that initial agreement. The most vigorous, dynamic, and dramatic debate that I have ever had at work was the 3 months that we spent arguing about how to write the word email. Should it be e-mail, electronic mail? Should it be capitalized? This was a religious and highly dramatic discussion. So I think that can be the hardest thing, is to achieve agreement.
I wouldn't have expected that word would be what would be that hard to pick, but wow, okay. I can see people having strong opinions on that. For planner, I usually refer to a plan or a plan in planner. I try not to say planner plan because it sounds repetitive, like you said. I find stream and video is easy, a video and stream, or a stream video, right? They're not the same word.
But I have a hard time with stream. It's one of those things where I usually almost always feel the need to put Microsoft Stream instead of just stream, because I think that otherwise we so often use the word stream in terms of just streaming a video or a video buffering. It's amazing how some terms, product terms, I like putting Microsoft in front of. Yep.
I have seen some people refer to a team group where they're referring to Microsoft Team, and the fact that it's created from an Office 365 or a Microsoft 365 group. And I usually try to correct that because I find that confusing. People say a Teams group or a Microsoft Team group. Just doesn't feel right.
Right.
Another confusion within my clients is the OneDrive. Specifically, when we talk about start educating them on the personal space, they get so confused. Is it OneDrive for Business or OneDrive for Consumer? Even though we are in Office 365 tenant and it's only OneDrive for Business, that's always that confusion is, are we talking about my personal OneDrive? How can the organization access that? So there's a lot of education there as well from a terminology perspective.
Yeah. I do find some people refer to that as your OneDrive.
Right.
And I'll often say your OneDrive site.
I think saying OneDrive site is more specific, but surprisingly, and it's happened quite a bit in the last week, is that I'll find users that get very confused between OneNote and OneDrive, and they don't get confused necessarily about what they do, but they keep on interchanging the terms. So they'll say something like, I need to move a file from my OneNote to my shared drive, or from my shared drive to and I'm like, you mean from the shared drive to your OneDrive, right? So I oftentimes find that they get those interchanged.
Yeah, I've seen that actually. Is there any other terms that you find are repetitive? Like with sites and people referring to team sites versus communication sites, do you find you have to be specific there often?
I think if you're referring to like a SharePoint communication site is clear. A SharePoint team site versus a Teams site, a Microsoft Teams site, I think it's very confusing. I think probably the most confusing thing to refer to is a SharePoint team site.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Dealing with organizations that have lived in on-prem SharePoint forever, referring to now and moving them into M365, just the term site for them is always a subsite. It's not a site collection.
That's right.
Also the education that we are talking about a SharePoint site now, it is actually a site collection. So that's always a very distinct term that will get people confused.
I find I adjust my language in those cases where I'm dealing with a customer who makes a distinction between site collection and subsite. I will start to refer to sites as site collections, just to reinforce the point that every site's going to be a site collection as we move into M365. But yeah, you do get some people that are kind of, they still have that in mind because that's what they've been living for years.
So let me bring this up to a higher level with the recent name change from Office 365 to Microsoft 365. This is something that a lot of companies are talking about, including mine. Do we rebrand all of our internal communications from Office 365 to Microsoft 365? And the learning on all of those things. And that gets to be very difficult, time consuming, and expensive.
It is.
I would say that it's, in this particular case, just one opinion, in this particular case, Office 365 going to Microsoft 365, it's subtle enough of a change that I don't think it warrants a full scale, we have to go change all of our training material or all of our communication material right away. Personally, I feel like if you're going to make updates to it, other updates for other reasons, then yes, update it. But to take on a big project where we're going to go through all of our training material and all of our communication material to change that, I find it's not significant enough of a change to warrant what could be a big project. I don't know if you guys agree or have other thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think it's more educational for me that a lot of organizations are confused. We're confused. What's Microsoft 365 versus Office 365? So that education to train them on what it includes and what it means. It's more than taking on a project to rebrand or changing the training materials. I don't think that was necessary in any of my previous clients.
One thing that I would love to see Microsoft create in Stream, I would love for them to create a channel in Stream that is a Microsoft channel to explain some of these things, and specifically about names and product names. I would love to have a Microsoft channel that I could either turn on or turn off in Stream, but I could highlight videos where they have a nice infographic style video with moving parts and pieces that explains, hey, we used to be Office 365, now we're Microsoft 365, and a 90-second video that explains why they made the change, so that every company doesn't have to produce that we could just simply share that video out via Stream, post it in Yammer, I think would be great. And having a video on, let's talk about planner plans. What is a plan in Planner? And kind of make it informal and make it a fun engagement where we can explain what these terms mean. I would love to see Microsoft providing something like that to save us some of the effort for all of our customers.
Yeah. Yeah. On name changes, on the topic of name changes, so I think was announced this week. I'm getting a little off topic here, but what do you guys think of the change of, correct me if I've got this wrong, Common Data Service to Data Flex?
Yeah. And then the Common Data Service, you've got a Data Flex Pro.
Yes, that's right. I don't know if I have that. I think it's Data Flex Pro. Right. Is there a Data Flex and a Data Flex Pro?
There is a Data Flex and Data Flex Pro. So the CDS, the Common Data Service, is Data Flex Pro. And then with Teams plus Power Apps, we'll have a Data Flex where they're storing all the data there.
Got it.
I don't mind it, actually. I don't. The CDS for me, I don't know. It was a personal thing. I didn't like the term.
I found it was a very technical term, Common Data Service.
Yeah. So I don't mind it. I like it, actually. I like the change to a Data Flex Pro and a Data Flex. Now, whatever implication is going to happen for if you use the Common Data Service before and now it's a Pro, is it going to be like a premium service there? Is it going to be charged? So we're going off topic here, but from a theme change, I like that.
I'm letting that one sink in because sometimes, everyone adapts to change differently. And sometimes, it's one of those things, it's the first time you hear a song, do you instantly love it or does it take a while to have it be an acquired taste? For me, Data Flex might be an acquired taste.
I like how you refer to it.
So on your question, though, here's I think a similar related question. So on your question about renaming Office 365 to Microsoft 365 and should we brand training material and so on. I just got a visitor here, sorry.
Oh, we have a visitor.
Yes.
We got a visitor to the podcast.
You heard a burp there, that's what that was, sorry. With the name change, this is going back just a little bit, but with the name change of Microsoft Flow to Power Automate, would you have gone and rebranded training material and changed it in that case?
Well, that's an interesting one because they went from saying Flow with a capital F was the product, but then Flows, lowercase f, was what you built. Not workflows, but we call them flows. Power Automate, they changed the name of the product to Power Automate, but they still call the workflows flows. Right. So we can almost get away with it a little bit more easily with when Flow changed to Power Automate. Although I'll admit that sometimes for me, it's more of a syllable thing. Saying Flow is easier than saying Power Automate. It's like, one syllable versus like 6. So I think it just took me a while to get used to. Power Automate didn't exactly roll off the tongue right away.
Yeah. I think the other impact it had too is the app launcher icon to get into the app also got renamed. So to me, that felt a little bit more impactful in that probably did require a change of training material or communications because you're actually directing people to something that's named differently.
And especially that it's not consistent everywhere, specifically about Power Automate. And this actually still is something that still really bothers me, in that they changed the product name to Power Automate. But if you look in OneDrive, the tab up on the toolbar is just called Automate.
Right.
And so that's how you engage with your flows. And to call the product Power Automate and then to shorten it to Automate, I think a lot of users aren't necessarily going to transition for you, or when they're looking for their flows, they may not look at that Automate name up in the tab.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Yeah, I don't think I've fully transitioned to Power Automate. I still refer to it in a lot of time as a flow.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of rolls off the tongue easier.
Mm-hmm. Well, this was a really interesting question about how we go about referring to things like teams, planner plans, and in general, changes like going from Office 365 to Microsoft 365. So this one might be a really interesting one for some of our listeners to comment on this particular video and to let us know what they have done in their organizations. So yeah, good topic. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.